The brain is made up of highly specialized cells which govern our thinking process and our emotions, and should they be damaged, these functions become disordered.
Hello, my name's Ian, and in January 2017 I suffered a stroke. It was about 9 o'clock at night and I was at my friend's place and my partner was at work some 60-70 k's away.
A stroke is recognisable by some abnormal functioning of one or other side of the body, say a dilated pupil or drooping of the mouth, weakness of one or other limb. It can also be expressed by abnormal behaviour, confusion, inability to make decisions, talking nonsense.
At the time I wasn't actually very able to make decisions for myself, quite obviously, where my friend Kirk and Joanne made a decision that I needed to go to hospital. So I did.
So when I saw him at the hospital, he was just lying on the bed, and he was aware of what was going on, but he didn't look how he normally looked. Part of his face looked a bit droopy, and he couldn't really answer me. I asked him how he was feeling, and he said he was fine, but obviously he wasn't. And he even insisted that he just wanted to go home because he just felt like there's nothing wrong with him.
I did not sleep that night, pretty much because of all the concern and the worry. And I do remember the doctors coming in and checking me out the following day, but they failed to sort of talk to me, and I didn't actually understand what was going on. And trying to make sense of what was happening, I got so frustrated I didn't know what was going on. I decided to discharge myself against everyone's advice. Please do not do this. Even if you think you don't need to be there, you really do need to be there.
He insisted to go home because he felt that he didn't need to be there. He felt fine.
Upon arriving home, my partner Varna rang Ross Harvey, our family doctor, and he basically just drove straight down and picked me up and said, "You're going back to hospital," and that was it. And carted me back to hospital, and basically took charge of what was going on, because Ross had worked out the only reason why I left was because I didn't understand what was going on, and it had to be sort of put into more layman terms for me to understand. Never underestimate your family GP in these matters.
That really worried me because I wasn't sure the extent of his stroke. I didn't know whether he would have some permanent effect after that, because as far as I know at the time, he just felt a bit weaker on one side of his hand.
The confusion I felt was of utter frustration and fear, a rather selfish fear. It was, at the time, it was all about me. What if I can't speak properly? What if I can't use my hands properly? What if I'm just going to struggle with walking? It really was all about me at the time. I've never felt so much selfishness ever as that. But I assume that's sort of fairly reasonable until you start getting your head around what's actually going on.
He came back from the hospital 5 days later. He still didn't gain all his strength, as he couldn't write properly. And I think the right side of his body is still a bit weaker. And we did have some plan in place where he had to come back to the hospital for some therapy, which he did for a few weeks after. And then they did more assessment. And thankfully by then he gained most of his strength back. He could use his right hand the way it used to. He could write properly again, and Yeah, and I couldn't see that droop in his face anymore.
The emotional part didn't sort of really come into play until I really got home and sort of into my own environment. And I became fairly unstable. I was tearing up and not able to put things into perspective. Got very frustrated with myself, frustrated with everyone else. I felt like they weren't understanding.
He looked quite confused quite often. I think he lost some of his confidence. He became a bit unstable, very irritable, which is understandable because I think he feels that he lost some of his strength, physically and mentally.
The first 6 months is probably the most crucial time because that's when you're going to regain most of your skills that you've lost during the stroke. So the more effort you put in, the better off you're going to be, from what I can gather. Well, it's paid off for me. I still have issues where I'm still sort of a bit emotionally unstable. I get upset with myself more so than anything else.
Yeah, I'm just grateful that he didn't have anything permanent from that stroke.
If you have a stroke or you think you've had a stroke, treat it as a serious emergency. Get to the hospital, tell them what you feel, and let the experts do what they have to do. Don't leave hospital until I tell you to, because the first 24 to 48 hours, the chance of a secondary stroke is quite high. And if that's going to happen, better off that happening while you are there. So that's my uneducated advice that I was taught once I was in there.
Rest your head, it's all over now. Rest your head, it's all over now. You came through the fog, made your way through the maze. You once were lost, then you came back to us. Faced with a million steps, you climbed them all, and then you came home. Rest your head, it's all over now. Rest your head, it's all over now. You came through the fog, made your way through the maze. You once were lost, and you came back to us. Now you'll be climbing these hills once again.